Do you want to make your own podcast? Spotify has a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters. And this is the platform that I use because it makes it so simple to record and distribute your podcast all in one place using your cell phone. What you need to do is download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. Hello, my name is Catherine Moore, social worker, mom, coffee lover, and founder of Social Workers Rise, where we inspire social workers to connect, expand their knowledge, and change more lives than they ever thought possible. I'm so excited you found my podcast. We will talk everything social work on every level from micro to macro. We will hear the stories of social workers who are doing big things, learn new skills, and most importantly, give you actionable steps to make a difference today. Let's go. Being a new social worker, clinician, or therapist can be intimidating when there's people coming to you for their therapy and looking to you for help. I know when I graduated with my master's, I had all of this education behind me. I have so many classes, and yet I still didn't know where to start. I wasn't very confident in my skills in how do I actually guide this person through the therapeutic process. What does that really look like in real life? So I was trying to organize all of my notes from grad school, trying to get all of my textbooks, and it was just a hot mess. Right out of grad school, you are expected to provide mental health services for new patients. Your employer wants you to create a care plan, and they expect you to have professional sounding documentation. I mean, you have your master's, right? That's an expectation after grad school. But sometimes these aren't really covered in grad school. I don't know about you, but I never took a documentation class. This was all learned in the field. And eventually, I did learn it, but it took me a long time. When I first started, I was just all in my head. Where do I even start? Can I do this? Who am I to help this person? I don't really remember them covering this in grad school. And how am I supposed to professionally document what I'm doing? Or even worse, you don't even apply for the jobs that you're qualified for because you're too intimidated. So I was there too, and it took me years of trial and error to figure all of this out. And even with an amazing supervisor, it was still a struggle. So this is the way that it has been going in social work until now. Things are about to change because it should not take you years to learn how to guide a client through the therapeutic process. So this is why I teamed up with my colleague Leslie. So we have taken what we have learned and condensed it into 6 hours for you. We cover all of the things that may not have been taught in grad school. Maybe you weren't paying attention, or maybe you just need a refresher. It's taken from our perspectives as community mental health and medical social work experts. So in the clinical essentials for future therapists, we cover all of the things that you need to know to take your client from beginning to end through the therapeutic process. We start with how to complete an initial assessment and what do you cover in your initial assessment. We next go into professional documentation. What are you supposed to be including in your notes? And how do you word the interventions that you just used? The therapy modalities and how to find yours. How to use the cognitive model in therapy sessions for maximum impact. Next, we do cover therapeutic skill sets for powerful therapy sessions in case you get stuck or in case you just need to dig a little bit deeper in with your client. And lastly, terminating with your client in a healthy and efficient way. All of this is covered in our virtual course and coaching hybrid. It's pre-recorded, so you can watch it whenever you can. We know that you are a busy student, busy professional. There's a lot going on, so we pre-recorded it for you so that you can watch it on your own time. And in addition, the best part is that we also include live Zoom calls that you can talk with Leslie and I, ask your questions, and see a role play of the therapy modalities and a role play of the things that are covered in the module so that you don't just know the information, but you have seen the information actually put into progress. It just allows for a more personal and unique experience so that by the end of the course, you feel more confident and you know at least where to start with your client, and you feel like you have the tools that you need to really guide them through an effective therapeutic process. So this is for you if you are a new graduate entering a therapeutic role, if you are a professional who may be new to one-on-one clinical therapeutic settings. Maybe you're pursuing a career change from macro to a clinical setting and you just need a refresher. This is also good for clinicians who are already working one-on-one with clients, but you want to learn other forms of the therapeutic applications. This is also for you if you are a clinician who wants to connect, network, and get more support from other social workers in the field. If this sounds like something that would be helpful for you, see the show notes for the link to register. Registration is open September 20th. I hope to see you there. Hello. Welcome back, my friend. Welcome to season 2. I am so excited that you are here with me. We have some amazing guests coming up, and we are kicking it off with week 1, episode 1, with the NASW New York State chapter with Samantha Fletcher. She is so amazing. I'm so excited for this interview. I learned so much from her, and I know that you will too. We talk about their anti-racism initiative and mainly what it means to do the work when you hear that social work is racist and that we need to do the work. What does that mean? What exactly does that mean? You are going to find out right now. I'm so excited for this. And this is just the first episode of a full season of guests that are doing non-traditional or unconventional roles in social work, that they have taken their skills, used them and adapted them, and been creative in how they do their jobs. They are doing, a lot of macro work that we don't hear a lot about in grad school, especially if you had a clinical focus. But there's so many ways that you can use your social work skills. I hope that this season gives you some ideas, gives you some inspiration, ignites that passion for you, and really reiterates that you have some really amazing marketable skills. If you have a social work degree, you are not just stuck in a job that you don't like, that doesn't fit you, that doesn't light you up, that doesn't ignite your passion, that isn't made for you. I genuinely believe that we are all made for a purpose, and you may not know what your purpose is, but you can start with, what is it that's calling to you? What is that little idea that you've always thought about and like, oh, that would be really cool to learn more about, or I really admire people who are doing, whatever, fill in the blank. That is a good place to start. So if there is an idea, if there is a spark in your heart to do something different, just do it. Start doing it. Do something today that will get you closer to that goal, to your life's purpose and your life's mission. I know you can do it. And this season is going to be chock full of social workers who are not doing the conventional therapy work, or if they are, they're owning their own business, or they're doing a side hustle, or they're doing something else that keeps them ignited and keeps them passionate. So I'm so excited that you are here. I hope you are too. If you love Social Workers Rise, the podcast, please, share this on your social media. Take a screenshot of the episode, share it in your stories, share Social Workers Rise, share our guests. Sometimes they're on Instagram, so make sure to tag them too. And we just love having you here. I really, really appreciate your time. And I'm done rambling, so let's get in with it and let's hop right into episode 1.
Hi, Catherine. Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. Thank you for asking.
Yes, of course. So I am so excited to have this conversation with you. And I'm ready to just hop right in. So can you tell me and the listeners a little bit about you and what you do?
Sure. So my name's Samantha Fletcher, and I am the executive director of the New York State chapter of NASW. And I've been in this position for a year. I just had my year anniversary last week. And we've been doing a lot to kind of to cater more to members, and also a lot of work with the profession at the chapter in the last year. And I'll give you a little of my background. I have an MSW and a Ph.D. I got both of those from SUNY Albany. And my primary area of research is social change and social activism.
I love that, because it's not the traditional, therapy route that a lot of times we hear about, in school. I just love that it's the advocacy and really inspiring big, massive scale change. I just love that.
Thank you. I did too. I really enjoy that. I went the clinical route in my MSW program, but I've never practiced clinically. I've only practiced like macro practice social work. So it's kind of interesting. I have the training, the clinical training, but I only do macro, and I'm very interested in how we make change. Like, what are the steps? Like, what can we actually do to create change?
Yes. And I love that, because that's what we need right now. We need change. There's so many things that are just not working. And I love what you guys are all about on Instagram. That's how I actually found you and how I got connected, because I was just like, all of the things that you guys are talking about on social media, as far as the anti-racism initiative and doing the work, and you're holding town halls, you're doing all these things. And I went to a couple of the virtual events, and just my mind was blown. I learned so much. So just, I thank you for all of the work that you're doing. And you really, I can tell that you're being responsive to the larger cries of social workers saying, like, this race, or this, the Black Lives Matters movement has brought up shining this light on all of this racism, even within our field of social work. And I love that you don't shy away from the hard conversations. you lean into them, and you're here. You're showing up, you're here. And I thank you so, so much, because that is not an easy thing to do.
Well, thank you for all your kind words. And yes, I've been doing racial justice work for years, and I'm a big believer we can't change what we don't acknowledge. And as social workers, we have to clean our own house first. And we are such a great profession to do that, because it's part of our values. It's part of our code of ethics. Everything we're doing with our racial justice work fits in perfectly with our core values. So I feel like very strongly we may not be able to control some other systems and structures right now, but the one thing we can control is ourselves, and how we change the profession and the steps that we take.
Yes, yes. So what does it mean? I hear everywhere, do the work, don't be racist, do the work for those people who are not Black, not identify as BIPOC. What does it mean to do the work? What do people like myself need to do to be more anti-racist?
That is a great question. So I always tell my identities first to explain. So I identify as Native American. I belong to the Cherokee tribe. Uh, However, and I always say this, I have full white privilege. So no one looks at me and says, wow, look at that Native girl. That just doesn't happen. So I receive all the benefits of white privilege. And the reason I frame it like that is because it doesn't matter how I identify. What matters is how society sees me, and they see me as a white person. And so, as a white person, someone who has white privilege, doing the work means a couple different things. The first thing it means is self-reflection. And we have one of our initiatives it covers this. It's totally geared towards self-reflection and modeling how to have difficult conversations, because unless we acknowledge the ways that we benefit from our skin color and the ways that other people are oppressed by their skin color, we can't start to make change. So you have to really start to look at, I call it developing your third eye and your third ear. And I actually got that from, there's a social activist who has a show on Sirius on the Urban Network, Joe Madison. And he always refers to developing your third eye and your third ear. And essentially what that means is anytime you're taking in information, whether it be from news, whether it be from out in society, whether it be from, watching television shows, or anywhere you're at, essentially, it's looking at what's beyond the surface. So if you're reading articles for your program and you're in a social work program, it's who's included in those articles and who's excluded, and how are people represented. So it's essentially assessing everything in your life. And once you start to do that, the areas of privilege and oppression become very clear. It's structural and systemic, and it's also personal. So a lot of people will talk about the police and police brutality because we see that with cameras, with people filming things. We end up seeing when that plays out, when people are killed or when they're injured. We see that, but it happens in all the other systems and structures as well, like school systems, medical systems, the labor market, everything. So it's really developing your self-reflection, and then also developing that third eye and third ear. And the other thing that you can do to do the work is to support BIPOC people, so Black, Indigenous, and people of color in their work. So we are socialized to sit underneath white people, like white people in charge. I think over 90%, I think it's over 95% of CEOs are white, and they're usually men. So we've been socialized that's who we listen to. Those are the bosses. That's who leads different things. Well, in social work, we can start to change that. And I know we're going to talk a little bit later about some of our initiatives that we're doing through the chapter. But one of the initiatives initiatives that we are working on is led by BIPOC social workers. And we always tell white people, if you want to be an ally, this is a perfect way to be an ally, is to work behind these BIPOC social workers and to really think about the thoughts that go through your head. And you do the same thing out in the real world. Like if you do have a manager or supervisor who's BIPOC, what kinds of thoughts do you have when you're working with that person? Do you question their judgment? Do you think about them differently? Do you react to them differently than you have like white bosses that you've had? So those sorts of things. It starts with self-reflection. Then it's really assessing your community, assessing everything you do, and then actively working behind BIPOC activists, BIPOC social workers, and supporting them and the work they're doing.
Yes, I love that. And I agree. I mean, I identify as BIPOC because I'm, half Hispanic, half white, but I do, like you said, get the white privilege and the white benefits, to the point where even though my daughter is mixed, she's half Black, there are things that I'm learning every single day about how to be a better person and how to think differently, because where I live is predominantly white. So she is the darkest child in her class and she is 3. So sending her to school and being surrounded by children who look differently than her is going to be our new normal, and it's new for me. I'm still learning all these things, and I was talking with my husband who's Black, and him and I were talking about pizza day at our school, and it was an extra $6 for the pizza day, and I'm like, oh, like, do you think we should do it? You think, whatever, just talking about it. And he said, yeah, I don't want her to miss out on any of these events. I said, oh, yes. I completely understand, because with the pandemic, there's a lot of things that we're already not going to be able to do. So it's a good idea to sign her up for the things that she can do and participate in. And he like blew my mind. He's like, yeah, well, there's that. And there's also the fact that she's the only Black kid in her class. And I don't want the other kids to think that she can't afford it. And I was like, what? It did not even cross my mind that is going to be a concern, and that is going to be a stereotype that she can't afford to participate in these extra events. And he was telling me, because he grew up here in the same city, that when he was going to school, they would always ask him, oh, is your dad around? Do you have your dad, or did he leave you? And he was always like offended by that, because his dad is amazing, and his parents are married, and just these little things that he had to deal with, and that my daughter will likely face growing up in this community, that I have to become more aware of and just think differently.
Yes, absolutely. So you're talking about microaggressions and macroaggressions that happen every day. I also have kids of color. Mine are older. They're 2019, and my daughter's 17. And I also have a biracial daughter. And one of the things that I had to teach her very early is that people feel very free to touch her hair and to touch her body. And so like I had to teach her, at a very young age, that people do not have a right to put their hands on you. And it's really sad that we have to teach that to our kids. So there's a part of you that mourns like having to teach Black and brown kids how to navigate the world, but it's for their safety and for their well-being. And at 17, she's had, I can't tell you how many people who have felt free to put their hands on her hair and her body. And then also just the safety talks that we have to have with our kids that start very young about how they interact with police, how they interact in businesses. I can remember when my kids were little, like your kids' age, I just told, I remember telling them that you don't get to look with your hands. When we go in the store, you have to look with your eyes. That, you do, because kind of what your husband was talking about, they blame their behavior on the whole race, and not just that this is a 3 or 4 year old little kid, who's exploring their own environment. Like it, and I know the other mothers in my group, in my friend group, we talk about the age when all of a sudden they're not kids anymore and they get treated like adults. And like research tells us that's much younger for Black and brown kids than it is for white kids. They become adultified like at a much younger age.
Yeah, that is terrifying to think of. Well, to think of my daughter as a 13-year-old, but treated as an adult. And yeah, people might be intimidated by her or scared. And I wonder, I mean, there's a fine line, because I feel like on one hand, she does need to be assertive, because people have already, other children, they come up and touch her hair, and people, adults just touch, like, no. So she knows already to say, no, don't touch my hair. And so it's like but then it's like you have to balance, there's the assertiveness, but then is she going to be an angry Black woman, and is she friendly, can we talk with her? And there's just no winning.
Well, and that's privilege. So like white people have the privilege of showing their emotions and Black people don't. So, a Black woman could say the exact same thing I'm saying, and they'll be labeled as the angry Black woman. But because I have white privilege, I'm just expressing an emotion. So that's part of that privilege, is like not being able to express that emotion. And I think part of the way you combat that is we talk about race every day in our house, because it's a part of our family's existence in this world is race, and it's important to talk about. So it's really teaching them how to externalize those micro and macro aggressions, so that they're not internalizing that and not thinking that they're the problem. Like, it's okay to be angry if someone thinks they have the right to put their hands on your body. Like, that's okay. Like, you get to be angry about that, because it's not okay to just walk up and touch people. And that's one of the things I've always modeled for my kids, starting when they're little. If someone would walk up and touch any of my kids' hair, I'd be like, excuse me, you don't get to come up and touch people's bodies. Their bodies belong to them. If you would like to touch their hair, you can ask them if you can touch their hair, but they're probably going to tell you no, because that's invasive, so I would kind of give them those words to use and like model those conversations for them. Like, when they were really young and didn't quite have those words. And then it also teaches the person who's doing that they're that they've crossed a line.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's so true. And I love the way that you just so succinctly, summarize everything that I was talking about. So it's good to have words for these things that are happening, and to be able to identify, what is going on and what's happening. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
So, okay, just to recap. So what we mean by doing the work, it's a self-reflection. How do we benefit from our own skin color? And we really need to work on developing our third eye and our third ear. What is beyond the surface? Who is included or excluded from whatever's going on in our world? And then how are these people represented? And then also, to the last one, like the 3 steps essentially, is support BIPOC work, and really, again, self-reflect on how you feel about having a BIPOC supervisor or social worker or someone who is in a leadership position.
Yes. Yeah, that was good.
Okay, good. I have to take notes. I didn't want to miss anything. So then, you mentioned a lot of the anti-racism work that you're doing over there at New York State, and the Anti-Racism Initiative. What is that? What does that mean? What does that look like?
Okay, that's a good question. So like I said, I've been involved in the work for a really long time, and I came into NASW exactly a year ago. And really the first several months was kind of restructuring the chapter and building a really strong foundation so that we could support different initiatives. So when George Floyd happened, first of all, a lot of people who've been doing this work for years, when George Floyd happened, we were all kind of looking at each other as like, why are they responding to this? Like, I mean, because we've been through this so many times. Like, there's so many people who came before George Floyd that were like, why is this one making a difference? And there's lots of theories around that. So, I mean, I know that was the way I was thinking for like a week. And then I was like, it doesn't matter. So one thing I always talk, with some of the younger social workers I work with is that the civil rights movement, Black Lives Matter, this movement has been around for hundreds of years. This movement started, back when a group of people were enslaved. And so the work's been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years, and it has different names. So, it was the civil rights movement for a long time, and then Black Lives Matter is just an extension of the civil rights movement that came into being around 2013. So this is a moment within the movement. So the movement will continue, but we don't know how long the moment will stay, because it's a little like the window has opened. So you get as much work as you can do during that window, and then we all know the window will close where people aren't as open to hearing things, and people aren't as available, like, to learn these different things. But we continue the work no matter if it's a moment or not. So the work continues. So this was just a perfect time to embed the Black Lives Matter movement, the civil rights movement, into our chapter at the New York State chapter. So it wasn't a response to George Floyd. It was more like, now's the time to embed the work, and the work will continue no matter what is going on in the news cycle, so to speak. So what we did is we built 6 initiatives that cover a widespread of things for people to engage in the work in, because people are at all different levels of this work. So you have some people who, they saw the George Floyd video, and for the first time they're like, oh my gosh, this is really bad. Like, racism exists. I didn't realize that before. So people who literally just stepped into the movement, and then you have people who've been doing the movement their whole lives. So it's like this wide, range of people and their experiences and where they're at. So we were very conscious of that when we developed these initiatives. So one of them is we have a web page. So our website is NASW-NYS.org. And when you go on our website, the first banner that comes up is Black Lives Matter, and you click on that, and that brings you to all our initiatives. So one of them is our resources. So you'd click on the resources tab, and we're just gathering resources for people. So we've arranged it in like different categories, like race and children, race and school, different things like that. So you can click on any of those, and we'll have articles, we'll have, it may be like a YouTube video, different things for you to look. So that's our resources. We keep adding to that. It's by no means extensive, but it's a start. Then we have, I'm starting kind of with our ones that aren't as developed. We have our creative expressions, which is set to start. This is going to start in the next, probably in the next month. And really what this is open mic. So this is just an opportunity. If you've ever been to an open mic event, they're extremely powerful. So like poetry, spoken word, we might be able to get some step in, even though it's going to be virtual. And really open mics are healing for the community, and they can also be educational for people not in the community, like in the BIPOC communities. So that's the only one we haven't actively started, but we do have someone who's working on it right now. Then we have Take Action. So Take Action is led by our policy coordinator at the chapter, Evelyn Williams. Evelyn has like about 40 years experience in policy work. She's phenomenal. And she's essentially, when we were building these initiatives, she called me and she's like, people want to act. That's what they want to do. I'm like, great. What do you want to do with that? So she created the Take Action. Sometimes we call it Act Now group. And she has started this. We've had 3 sessions. We very unfortunately didn't record the first one because we had just gotten Zoom and we didn't know how to record. But the second and third sessions were both recorded, and anyone can go in and listen to. They can go in and listen to it and kind of get filled in. She started with history. So the first 2 sessions were really about the history of racism in the United States. And then the third session that she did a couple of weeks ago was on white privilege. And then her next session, which is on Monday, September 21st, is going to be where we start work groups. So she's putting together work groups to really look at how we change policies. And we're looking at different systems. So like if you're a school social worker and you're like, hey, I want to look at changing policy in schools, then there'll be a work group for that. There might be a work group that looks at the criminal justice system. So that's her initiative that she's looking at. You can go in, look at that, listen to her recordings, and then sign up for the next one. I think it's really important that I tell you that all of this is free and open to everyone, because the most important thing is change. So we have people from all over the United States that join these initiatives, and they're welcome. You don't have to be a member. You can just come and help do the work. Then we have our forums. On our website, it's referred to as self-reflection and training. So this is the only thing we don't tape. And this is set up, we modeled this after the work that I did with my partner, Don Knight Thomas, in the racial justice work that we were doing. And what it is we break people into small groups, and each small group is co-facilitated. So there's someone with white privilege, and then there's a BIPOC facilitator. And the facilitators just guide discussion. So we just had one on Thursday, and our topic was white privilege. So we developed questions. The co-facilitators, we've all been working together for a while now. So as a group, we developed the questions, and then each group dives into the questions. All of this is mixed race. And then people just start answering the questions, and we encourage everyone to be active in the conversation. If someone's overly active, we encourage them to step back and let other people speak. If people are shy, we encourage them to speak. And it's really creating this safe space to be able to say whatever you need to say. So like, we've had people who they're like, this is the first time I've ever talked about race. I don't want to be offensive. Can I ask this question? The answer is yes. We want you asking the questions, because we call it a brave space. So it's a space to be brave and sit in the discomfort of these conversations. And we purposely do not record them because we want it to be a safe space. No one's recording what you're saying. It's a time to really work on yourself, your self-reflections, and develop that skill to sit in uncomfortable conversations for a long period of time. So that's under the self-reflections and training. I just emailed the co-facilitators today to set up our October meeting. So we'll be advertising that soon. Again, free, open to everyone. Then we have our continuing education. This is the only thing that there is a fee, with. So after we created the initiatives, any anti-racist programming that we put up is free to our New York State members. Other chapter members and non-members, there is a fee for. And then we had a couple of trainings that we had scheduled before we set this up. So there's a fee for everyone, just because we'd already scheduled it that way. But I did promise that we would have 3 of these that would be free for everyone. And our first one that's free for everyone is November 16th. And it's practicing culturally competent social work in school settings. So November 16th, on our website, it says that non-members have to pay, but that's not true. It's free for everyone. So that's the only thing that has a cost associated with our continuing ed. And that's just primarily because we are a business. We pay our presenters, and there's a business side to that. Then our last initiative, we refer to as Revolutionizing the Profession. And so this really came out of a discussion that we had with one of our board members. She's actually our MSW student board member. Her name's Notion Hawk. and she's extremely active in the chapter. She runs one of our committees, and she was really disturbed by some of the things that she was seeing. And so we had a meeting, and through this meeting, we came up with this idea of, you know what we do have control over? We have control over the profession, and we can change the profession of social work. And we developed this really a path to do that through initially starting with town halls. So our first town hall was, I don't even remember when it was. I think it was a couple months ago. The recordings are all on our website, and I really encourage you to listen to the recordings. That first town hall was extremely powerful. And we decided the first town hall would be just to acknowledge the history of racism within social work, and then also existing racism within the profession. So we started with the history piece, and then it moved into giving the floor to BIPOC social workers who talked for almost 2 hours about their experiences in schools of social work and in practice. And it was an extremely supportive environment, and it just set up the whole series. Then we had our next town hall, I think it was maybe 2 weeks ago, and for that one we set goals on how to make the New York State chapter of NASW racially equitable. So that's kind of the purpose of the town halls here, going out for the next several months, is to set goals. So now we have specific goals for the New York State chapter, and then in the following town halls, we're going to be setting goals for schools of social work, for micro practice, and for macro practice. Once we have all those goals set, so the way I think about goals is, if the profession was racially equitable, what would it look like? Those things become goals. So things like pay equity, representation in the workforce, who gets hired, like all of those things become the goals. Once we have the goals, then we're going to break up into work groups, and the work groups will develop actionable steps to meet those goals. And then we plan to disseminate all that information out to the stakeholders. So like when we do the goals and the action steps for schools of social work, we'll ask to have a meeting with them, and we'll present it to them and work with them. When we do it with like macro practice and clinical practice, any organization that hires a lot of social workers, we'll ask to meet with them, we'll present everything. This is going to be a couple of years to do this. All the town halls and all the work groups will be led or co-led with another, not with a white person. Everyone will be a BIPOC social worker, but this is a great place for white social workers to step in as allies and help do some of the work that it's going to take on these work groups to create these papers to disseminate. So that is our last initiative, and our next town hall is scheduled for September 29th. And we have a group of primarily Black women right now who they volunteered to co-facilitate these town halls, and they definitely want to be involved in the work groups. So we're going to kind of map out the rest of the year, our schedule, and what each town hall will be focused on. So that is our Black Lives Matter initiatives.
Wow, that is a lot going on.
It is a lot.
Yes, but it's all so necessary, and I do feel like it's very comprehensive, which is what we needed. Because for me personally, when I think of overcoming racism, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's everywhere. Like, where do we even start? And so I love how you just broke it down into 6 really big different areas that people could get involved with. I feel like there is a place for somebody everywhere in one of these things. If you're more creative, you have the open mic. If you are more, want to sit down and learn, there's the town halls. And I'm really excited for the next town hall on September 29th. I'm going to put that on my calendar, make sure I can go, because I went to one. It was a forum. I believe I went to the forum that was that was recent. And I just learned so much just listening to other people. I had no idea of the experiences that people had in the social work profession, even, to the point where they said multiple people have agreed that it was traumatizing for them to
Oh, yeah.
go through social work school, like education. And oh my gosh, my heart just broke, just, hearing their stories and things that I'm looking back now. I'm like, oh, I can see how, yes, I can see how they could feel that way. Um, and, and just honoring that, like, oh, geez. And again, doing that self reflection with me, like, is there ways that I could change? Is there ways that I can be better?
Yeah. And you said something really important that I've heard a lot in doing this work is it's so big. Where do we start? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very common question because it's the country was founded on racism. And that's something we have to talk about. I'm Native. So like that that's a very, we talk about that a lot in tribal settings about, what happened to Native populations, what happened to Black populations, with how the country was founded. So, of course, if you look at how our country was founded, of course, racism is embedded in every part of society. Of course, it is. It's how we were founded. And we have to start to open our eyes and ears and start to see that. And one of the things because people get really overwhelmed and they're like, I'm one person, what could I possibly do? Well, the first thing that any person can do is that self-reflection work and really look at, ways that you've benefited from different systems and different structures. And one of, I'll give the example that I'm a woman. And as a woman, I have faced some oppressions like through sexism. I always say it's literally nothing compared to what my children have faced as people of color, because theirs is just constant and it's every day, like what goes on with them. And I can't say that's the case with the sexism. I will say that the older women I've talked to, they did face sexism, very heavy sexism, when they were younger and they were new workers, and it was very strong. I haven't faced it as strong as they have, but one thing you can control is your own group. And oftentimes that's the hardest. The hardest people to
Mm-hmm.
talk to are your friends and family, because they know you and they know how to get you to quit talking and all of that. But we used to do, when I was at the university, we used to do like sessions right before people would go home for Thanksgiving or the December, January holidays. And we would talk to them about how you have conversations but still maintain relationships, and that you can show people a different perspective. And then we would have sessions as soon as they came back to debrief about those sessions and how it went, and like kind of talking about how things could have gone better, how what they could say next time, that type of stuff. And then you also have out in society, like if you start to look, like once we get back to society after COVID, but racism happens all the time in your own environment. Like I've been in stores where employees are following Black people in the store. And I've been in stores where the person in front of me gets questioned about their credit card. And as someone with white privilege, I've spoken up in those situations, and I'll say, well, you didn't ask the person in front of that person if their credit card was stolen. Are you asking her because she's Black? I'll just kind of call it out when I see
Mm-hmm.
it, and they kind of stumble and they get, but like it's just kind of calling out what you're seeing. And so you learn to do that. Those are skills you pick up and that you learn. But yeah, anyone can make a difference in your own environment, in your own community.
Yes, I love that. And um, it takes people getting uncomfortable, because you will be making people uncomfortable. And a lot of times as social workers, we like to keep the peace. We're peacemakers. We don't like to start arguments, but this is something that must be done. It's not a luxury. It must be done and it's part of your your ethics as a social worker to call out this BS. I mean, it cannot continue. And it's, I feel like you're not, you know, you're almost being a poser if you're just kind of saying like, well, these injustices happen, but I'm not going to say anything. It's not my place. We're in a unique position to do something and to make change and to speak up and to advocate for those who can't advocate for themselves or who are tired. They just need some backup.
Yes. Yeah. And also it kind of provides that it's using your privilege. Right.
Hmm.
So like when I work with activists, they don't need me to talk. They need me to do the work.
Hmm.
They're like, hey, we need copies of this. We need to get space, then I'm doing the work. But, if I'm out in a public situation, that's humiliating. You're purposely trying to humiliate someone. And, then that's somewhere where I can speak up. And as a social worker, I can do it in a way that if, the cashier or whatever is like, as a social worker, I could be like, well, I just want to let you know that's what it looks like from my perspective,
Hmm.
because you're singling out this person. And I mean, I don't know what else to think it could be, because she's just getting her groceries just like everyone else in line, like
Right.
you could kind of have, and then you're modeling for other people how to also have those conversations.
Yes, yes, I love that. So, kind of switching gears here a little bit. I know that you have a leadership position with NASW. You guys are doing some amazing work in New York State, and all of the chapters are, operating independently. So, I'm just kind of wondering, why would it be important, or what would be the benefit, or why should social workers join NASW?
That's a really good question. So when I came into this position, I asked myself that same question. Why should people join? So a lot of the work that I was doing, and me and the staff and the board of directors were doing over the last year, was really building a chapter that we could answer that question easily. Like, why should you join? So like one of the first things we did is we made sure that we created continuing education. So our New York State members, we guarantee that they are able to get all of their continuing education for free through their membership. So we offer at least one free training a month. And for New York State, they have to get 36 CE hours every 3 years. So I think so far in 2020, we've offered close to 60 free continuing ed hours for our members. So that was kind of like that first step, is like, there's got to be a tangible benefit. If I'm going to pay the 236, what do I get? So that was one of the first things that we did. Now, every chapter is different, so you have to check with each chapter to see what their member benefits are. And then the other thing we did is, again, I told you I did a 5-year study on how do you create social change. And one of the biggest findings from my study is that grassroots activism from people who are boots on the ground is one of the most effective things you can do. So I wanted to put the power of our advocacy in the hands of members. And we've done that. So we have a policy coordinator who's phenomenal. So they get her expertise, but the members make the decisions. So we have an advocacy and government relations committee that sets our legislative agenda. So that all comes from the members, and then the staff supports the members in what they choose. So we have some people that's why they join, is because they want to set the chapter's legislative agenda. Then we have a private practice connect listserv for our private practitioners. So like with telehealth and everything that's going on with COVID, that resource has been unbelievably helpful with, people passing back and forth information. We just did an advocacy campaign where the members could advocate for an extension of an executive order to cover telehealth for mental health services. So they were able to engage in that. So that's that's one of our member benefits. And then we have several committees. That's one thing. To serve on our committees, you do have to be a member, and the committees drive the chapter. the committees and the board of directors. So everything we do is member driven. So if you don't like something or you don't like how we're handling something, join and be part of that change. So I would say those are reasons why members can join. I will say that we haven't been as strong with like students and recent grads. So we're focusing on that now. If you're a student or you're a recent graduate, why should you join? Now we're building up that to create initiatives and to create programs that would be beneficial to that group of social workers. So yes, that's my answer, is that I feel like at New York State that we've created all these initiatives that I can now say, yes, you should join, and here's why.
Yes, that's definitely something to be proud of. And I know that each chapter is going to be a little bit different. So if people feel like there is a need in their area, because we're nationwide, worldwide with the podcast, but nationwide specifically, how can social workers approach their own local chapters to start this conversation, to get involved, to kind of see, to start this change? Do you have any tips for that?
Yes. So each chapter has an executive director. Now, some of the chapters are smaller, so that executive director may be the only staff person for the chapter. And when that's the case, they really don't have the resources to do some of the larger initiatives we're doing in New York State, because we do have staff that helps carry some of these initiatives. So I always say there's two different kind of governing bodies. You have the board of directors. So each chapter should have a board of directors, and then they should have the chapter staff. So I recommend reaching out to your chapter staff, like going on the website, emailing them, and letting them know, hey, I'm interested in getting involved with the chapter. Here's what I'm interested in. And it really depends. So we have an active board and an active staff. We work very closely together. So, but sometimes, the board may take more of a leadership role, especially if there's only one staff member. So if you reach out to the staff, they'll kind of let you know, like, oh, okay, we have a committee for this, reach out to the chair of the committee, or, oh, reach out to our president of the board. They can walk you through this. So I would start with that, the staff, like emailing the staff of the chapter and introduce yourself. Let them know you're interested and what you're interested in doing.
Okay, awesome. That definitely sounds doable. So thank you so much, Sam. Where can people find you, learn more about, the work that you're doing, and get in contact with you?
So the best place is to go to our website, which is NASW-NYS.org. And that's one of the things we've been working on over the last year, is cleaning up our website. So we have a lot of things on here that are up to date and ready to go. So again, when you first log on, that first banner is going to be Black Lives Matter. It says "We Stand With You." If you click on that, you'll get to all those initiatives. If you're looking for information on the staff or our board of directors, that's going to be under our About tab, and there's a staff tab that has my email and our other staff members and all of our interns. And then we have leadership and government with our board of directors on there as well. So I'd say that's the best place to find us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sam. It was a pleasure, and I'm really excited for what you guys have coming up in the future, and just learning more as we go every day.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I've really enjoyed this.
Take care. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Social Workers Rise. If you loved it, write a review and give us 5 stars wherever you listen to your podcast. This just helps other people just like you find us and join our community. Also, I would love to connect with you on Instagram. You can find me at Social Workers Rise. I can't wait to see you next week. Bye.